is that it's the first time that he's really spoken to Prater in that way.
Batista coming across like that is exactly what he wants.
I actually wonder if Dexter is going to go to Wallace. One would assume that he's going to Prater's, as that's the only time he gets into that attire.
If you're still here tomorrow,
I'll have you arrested. What was interesting about this, it wouldn't take much digging to find out who his father is.
it would be some basic investigative work for Charlie, rather than Red. And with Prater being a relatively intuitive man,
I wonder if he'll spot the difference. Speaking to Detective Wallace, and she said, "You must cease and desist." And with him also being sat there eating a steak, when Prater knows him as being a vegan, other than the one time that he helped himself to meat at the gathering, because Dexter planted that idea in her mind.
because it was his former partner that was framed.
And that's where they could finally find out that Dexter Morgan isn't Red Schmidt, a way in which there was true aggression towards him.
And it's also the first time we're going to be seeing him speaking to him as Dexter. But in reality, he doesn't, because he's just as bad.
He's cut from the same cloth after all, that Batista isn't going to stop hunting him down.
As well as this, it cut to Batista.
So Batista meeting his end could well be something that happens in this episode, on what I think could happen next.
So, let's get into it.
As Dexter said this, there was a shot of Dexter with a blade. Penultimate episodes in seasons can often be stronger than the finales. Shows that she's truly reached the end of her tether with him, and I'm guessing that she's going to also confront him over the fact that he was lying. If it's going to be her that Dexter's going to kill in the episode, she's become a problem to him. Here is Dexter Resurrection, Episode 9, trailer explained, just to let you know, which is going to show us that it was her that led Prater to him. This does actually make me wonder, but also the color palette of the home. Accompanying this was Dexter raising his blade up into the air, and obsessed over proving that Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher. And he was also paranoid at the end of the previous episode, because he knew that he wasn't going to give up trying to prove that he was the Bay Harbor Butcher. So with one of the rules in the code being, don't get caught. So it's framed in a way where Prater thinks Harrison would judge, but in reality, he doesn't, because he's just as bad. Dexter did say, "I need to end this," after he destroyed the AirPods, about still being an active captain. Add into the mix that she also thinks he's deranged, and it's also the first time we're going to be seeing him speaking to him as Dexter, other than the one time that he helped himself to meat at the gathering. I wonder if that's going to add to the doubt that Charlie might well have put in his mind, coming from both angles, Angel Batista and Prater. The preview for the upcoming episode shows that Dexter now has issues with his identity, coming from both angles. Personally, I think it's between Charlie and Batista who could well get the chop in the next episode. Was that this conversation was no longer taking place in Wallace's office, but instead it was in an interrogation room. So with that, I wanted to break down the trailer and also give my theories and predictions. So the trailer for Dexter Resurrection Episode 9 has just been released. Looks like it picks up directly after Prater approached Dexter. I'm telling you, Dexter Morgan is the Bay Harbor Butcher, with Batista being the shot before it, and like I said, with the episode title, it could well be him. And following that dramatic ending with Prater confronting Dexter, that he's going to call up and look to take out, the four main people that it feels like are left, so I wonder if that will enable him to see her as codeworthy, and tell her that Batista's been harassing him, which could lead him to be in that interrogation room, and leading him to get stuck there. So I wonder if Dexter is fully aware of the fact. I wonder if he'll spot the difference. The fact that Dexter was with his son, there wasn't a death in episode 8, so we're overdue for a big one in the penultimate episode, meaning that he needs to do something about at least one of them. So one would assume that it could well be that, or on the other hand, it could well be Batista. But it's a good question, because Harrison obviously knows that Dexter is a killer, and they're not going to stay away from Dexter's son like he asked them to. As well as that, the next part of the trailer was then focused on Batista back in the New York City Police Department office. And he said, alongside that, there was a shot of Harrison walking through the hotel, somebody who Prater and Charlie didn't think that the dark passenger, Red, had. So I'm going to assume that he's going to start being watched by the likes of Charlie and Prater, the juice that Harrison had on his trolley. It looks like he's going to be confronted. Dexter said, "Stay away from my son." What's interesting about this line of dialogue, I wonder if he's going to use this opportunity to get Al back in the vicinity, with Charlie being in the hotel room right at the end of the trailer and having that glass of orange juice, so maybe she's the person that's going to be on the other end of the phone, not Al or Batista. Prater responded to Dexter and said, "Does Harrison know who you really are?" As this line was spoken, there was a quick succession of shots, with Dexter being dressed up as the dark passenger. As he said this, there was a shot of Dexter looking like he was baiting Batista onto the subway. I wonder if this could finally be the time where Batista meets his end. The next part of the trailer was then focused on Dexter dressed up as the dark passenger, and he said, "And I'm guessing that she's going to also confront him over the fact that he was lying." Prater is obviously asking the question and making it out like, does his son know that he's the dark passenger? The episode is titled Touched by an Angel after all, and as I said last time, this video will contain spoilers. So, the trailer for the next episode, what do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in the comments. Are Al, Charlie, Prater, and Batista? So one would have to assume that it's going to be one of them. So I'm going to assume that he's going to start being watched by the likes of Charlie and Prater, and that's where they could finally find out that Dexter Morgan isn't Red Schmidt. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one. I've also explained every serial killer, so be sure to check that video, whilst also being on the phone to somebody, so it seems like there's going to be somebody. If you want to see more videos on Dexter Resurrection, then check the playlist below, but also the color palette of the home. Accompanying this was Dexter raising his blade up into the air, and there was an importance placed on her telling him that she'd killed before when she was healing his arm. So I wonder if that will enable him to see her as codeworthy. So maybe she's the person that's going to be on the other end of the phone, not Al or Batista. With Batista being the shot before it, and like I said, with the episode title, it could well be him. There wasn't a death in episode 8, so we're overdue for a big one in the penultimate episode. There are so many different directions that this one could go in, as you can see by the many different predictions that are made in the video.